And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Susan Grau, who during her near-death experience went to the room of heart's desires and more. Susan, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you. And if you don't mind, Susan, let's start on the day that this happened and go from there.
Just to preface it this, I did see spirits prior to this happening. So I do want to say that because when I finish the story, you'll understand when I say I saw spirits when I came back.
Are you telling me this because the spirits were warning you or foretelling that this was going to happen?
I think they were letting me know that I was going to have some shift, a universal shift, yes.
Were you freaked out about it or you just didn't understand?
It just was. I was only 3.5 or 4. It just was.
Oh, okay. You were that young.
Yeah.
So what happened?
So I was playing fort with some boys that were older than me, and I wanted to continue playing. And they said, if you want to play, you have to get us popsicles. And so I went into the garage that I wasn't supposed to be in. And we had a boat in there and a freezer. And the freezer wasn't plugged in, but I was 4.5. And I didn't understand that. And so up into the freezer I went trying to find popsicles. And as I'm calling out flavors and letting them know I'm going to get their popsicles so I can play, they closed the freezer door and they closed the garage door and they ran home. And then I think in actuality, they didn't go home at first. They went out and played. And at first I thought they were just, I was in on a game. And then I realized when I heard that garage door close that this wasn't a game. And I innately felt like an animal trapped in a cage. I literally knew I was in really big trouble. And I started screaming at the top of my lungs as loud as I could and trying to wiggle. I was stuck facing inward and I couldn't really wiggle. And in those days, you couldn't get out of a freezer. And a lot of children had died. And so it was supposed to be bolted and put to the wall, but my mother did not do it. My father did not do it. We just weren't allowed in the garage. And I was screaming and my mother heard me screaming, but she thought that it was cats. You know, cats make a very high screaming. Yeah, it's the sound of terror, that really high pitched scream. And the next thing I knew, I saw 3 lights, 3 beautiful lights, and they told me to stop screaming, and I didn't. I kept screaming, and they told me again, stop screaming. And one of them seemed very powerful to me and really like put her or his foot down, stop screaming. And so I did for a moment. And the next thing I knew, I was at the bottom of a stairwell, and I felt myself kind of suck out of my body, but I didn't understand that feeling. I did not look back and see my body, and I always wondered why. And it's actually Raymond Moody who said to me, Dr. Raymond Moody, who said to me, and some people don't know, especially children, they don't see their bodies. It would scare them. So next thing I knew, I was at the bottom of a stairwell, and I was standing there, and looking back now as an adult, I can describe this very differently than as a child, but I saw a Greco-Roman room. And it had these pillars, and it was cracked and broken, and the ceiling was wide open. And somehow I knew that if I could get up those stairs, I would be in a room where there was a circle or well, and it would match what was open in the ceiling. And the minute I thought it, I was there. I was on the edge of this well, and I saw movement in this well, looking back like DNA, looked like DNA moving. And I remember thinking, what's going on down there? And I was hearing things like, my mother's going to die of cancer. Please, God, don't let her die. And my dad, I'm turning 16. My dad won't buy me a car. Please, God, tell him to buy me a car. So they were actually prayers or our heart's desires that I was seeing intermingling as one consciousness. And I know that's hard to describe, but the afterlife is hard to describe with human words, but it was one consciousness, and it was moving and twirling like DNA. And I kept hearing all these different things, and I would pick up on some of them, like what they meant. And I looked over at these 3 lights to my left, and I said, do you answer all these? And they said, no, Susie, sometimes what people desire the most isn't good for them. And I was shocked because to me, that was what my mom would say to me. So I thought, well, where am I exactly? Like, this is really crummy. I don't want to be here. And then I immediately felt loved. And I saw this room as like there were crystals or lights everywhere, really bright, bright lights, but they didn't hurt my eyes. And I felt a little bit like Jello, and I could feel that I wasn't really solid, but I was me. And I don't know any other way to describe that. And then I saw this beautiful road in front of me, and I called it the Yellow Brick Road because I'd seen The Wizard of Oz. And that made sense to me. It looked like yellow pavers. And I saw pyramids. And I watched people go to the bottom of these pyramids and start pulling from the bottom of these pyramids and start paving a path. And it was bumpy and crooked and messed up. And I watched them, and they felt like people. And no, remember, everything is metaphorical there, especially when you're a child. They don't know how to show you any other way. It feels like you're in Disneyland. And everyone sees Disneyland differently, don't they? Through their eyes. So I saw them, they were saying, God help me, for the love of God, help me. Somebody do something. Nothing's working out. My life sucks. This is horrible. I was hearing all kinds of really intensive things. And I watched these beautiful lights come in and start removing these pavers. And I innately knew that that pyramid was their life journey. And they were putting the pavers back to the bottom of these pyramids, and these lights were going to the top. And I call them my angels. That's how I understood them. They come as we understand them. I want to say, especially children. They don't want to scare us or make us be concerned. And they started pulling from the top of these pyramids, and they started paving the path. And I said, what are you doing? And I innately knew that that was our life journey, that pyramid, and that that people were throwing it off balance by trying to pave it themselves. I just knew it. And they said, we are the pavers, you are not. All you have to do is walk it. And I said, how do you know if you're walking it right? Now, I know they gave me these questions so that I would get answers, but I didn't understand that at the time. And they said, we bless and block everything, make no mistake. You can get through that wall that we put in front of you, battered and bruised at best, or you can shift. And if there's another wall, shift again. And if there's another wall, shift again. And before you know it, you'll see us paving your path. You think you know what's best for you. And they covered what I would call a heart space. We know what's best for you. What you try to control controls you, and what you run from will chase you, Susie. Just follow the path. And I was like, okay, I didn't really understand, but I remembered. And they said a lot of other things to me that were quite intensive that I don't share. They're personal to me. And then I just was all of a sudden, I didn't pop, but I was all of a sudden in this room, and I asked where I was, and they said I was in the room of knowledge, which people call the Akashic records. And that's what I think they call it. I think that's what it was. And I was watching people, and I watched these beautiful, there weren't tablets, but I want to call them tablets, but I watched them come in front of people. It felt virtual, but there was no such thing as virtual. And I remember this feeling of they were doing their life journey. They were choosing their life journey. And it was quite intensive. Like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to let this happen. And I'm going to go through this because my soul's going to really grow. And I could see these beautiful beings saying, it's a lot to do. And you might want to rethink that. That's like the PhD in hardship, let's do this differently. And they didn't use those exact words, but that's how I saw it. And, or how I heard it or felt it, really. And they were saying, oh no, I can do it. I know I can do it. And they'd say, well, you do have free will. And I said, what are they doing? And they said, you're in the room of knowledge, and they're planning their next incarnation. I had no idea what they meant. And interestingly enough, later on in life, when I got older, someone said to me, "Do you believe in reincarnation?" And I went, "Oh my God, that's that word. There's that word." And I knew what they were talking about. So that kind of happened to me throughout my life, as things that didn't make sense to me began to make sense. And they were gone. And then I'd see new people standing there, and I felt like they were families, and they were planning their next incarnation. And they explained to me all about the room of knowledge and what that meant and how we plan our events, but we do have free will on this planet. So it might look like this, Susie. You might decide to be married in your contracts, and you will be married. You might be 95, but you'll be married. Who you marry, how long you're married, the kind of marriage you have may be free will and not in your contracts. And your free will teaches you how to grow and expand. And that's what you're there for, is to grow your soul. And I was in shock because I didn't really understand it, but I kind of did. It kind of made sense to me just from listening, to my parents and, people talking about, well, you can do what you want. You have free will. So I kind of interchanged it with the human conversations. And the next thing I knew, I was in this beautiful room, and it was the room of companions, they told me. And it had beautiful lights and animals, and they were running and playing and romping. And I knew that they were our soul animals. And they were all different kinds of creatures, though. Some I had never seen on the planet. So they must have been there for eons because I hadn't seen them. And they were happy and joyful, and they were just running through fields. And I went into this field, and dandelions, those flowers you blow on that you make a wish, and daisies, what I thought were daisies, but they were colors I had never seen in my life. They were so vibrant, and everything was breathing. Everything was alive. It was like being in a cartoon for me, but not. It was so alive and so brilliant and so bright and so beautiful. And I was sitting in this field, and I saw animals running through this field, and I saw loved ones far away, but I didn't have any loved ones that died. I just knew that they were loved ones. And I saw trees, and even the blades of grass were pulsating life. Everything was alive. And I don't share this normally, but I'm going to share it. I'm going to try not to cry. I looked to my left, and there was a mountain, and it was a beautiful, beautiful mountain. And I wanted to climb up it because on this mountain was this beautiful being. And it was so powerful with love. I had never felt what I felt. I was everything and I was nothing. I was completely whole and complete in perfection. There was nothing wrong with me. I was perfect in every way. And I wanted so bad to get up this mountain. And the next thing I knew, this ray of love, I don't know how else to describe it, was coming towards me, and it was surrounding me. And I felt something I've never felt here. It's impossible to describe. And it just took over me. And I felt like I was everything, everything, not just someone, not just something, everything to this love. And I felt like I never wanted to leave it. I just wanted to be in this feeling. But I never forgot my mommy during this time. I kept feeling her presence somewhere, somehow. And then I remember, this beautiful love light shared a lot with me about my journey and about how all of my imperfections I would understand someday, and that everything that ever happened to me I would feel a knowing because of it, and I would be more because of it, and I would be beautiful because of it, not in spite of it, and to never allow it to make me spiteful. And I didn't really understand because I'd only been through so much, in my little lifetime. Enough, but not as much as most. And And then I looked to my right and I saw this cobblestone cottage, and it was so vivid to me, and it was beautiful, and it was filled with colors. And I watched this light being, which I chose to call an angel, my light being angel, come out of this beautiful cobblestone cottage. And she came to me, and I was still sitting on the ground and in this beautiful place. And she said, "It's time to go." And I saw her floating, and all I could think of was, I want to float. I hope I can float. And I guess I was floating, but I didn't know it. And I was little and I just wanted to float. I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And I imagine I was, but I couldn't see myself floating. But I did feel like I was moving at a very smooth movement, but I didn't put those two together. It's so young. And the next thing, I was by this beautiful river. And she was explaining to me that we go through water, and that water was our cleansing, and water was how we got to the earth, and we go through it. And when she said cleansing, I thought she meant she was going to clean me up because I was in a field, and she was going to make me clean for my mommy. And today I understand what she meant, but I didn't then. And she asked me if I was ready to go, and I didn't know, because in this whole conversation, she had said to me, "You are going to have a difficult journey, but your free will decide what that will look like and how you'll handle it. Make sure you remember that you are loved throughout your journey," which I didn't. I did everything every other human did. And she shared with me that I would be helping others with everything that I would go through, and that the earth plane is our experiential place, and it's our school to help our souls expand, and to always remember that our souls are perfect and pure and will never be damaged. And I can always go to my soul, that it is the divine to the divine, and it will always be healing and heal us. And I didn't really understand it all, but I loved hearing it. It felt really safe and wonderful. And she asked if I was ready to go, and I wanted to see my mommy, and she brought my mommy up. So I said, okay. And during this whole time, my mother was hearing, "Your baby's in the freezer." My mother was a medium, and she was put away for that. She was locked up for that. And she saw things. And they had her highly medicated, on Valium was the drug of choice in those days. And so she wasn't really listening to her instincts. And I was talking to her. I could see her. And I was saying, "Mommy, I'm in the freezer." And I'd see her move like she was hearing me. But I think that was my first understanding of communication with people here and the spirit world. And she finally went, "Oh my God, my baby's in the freezer." And she said she went out to the garage and saw the garage door closed. She knew I wasn't capable of lifting it, so she thought she was wrong. And um, she said she almost didn't go in because she just knew I couldn't lift that garage door. And there were no garage door openers and cell phones in those days. And she opened the garage door and she went in, and she said she kind of hesitated, and then she just got this feeling like she had to. And she opened up the freezer door and she saw me. My back was to her, and she spun me around, and she said I was ashen, and my fingertips were bluish, like gray blue. And she said she panicked. She dropped me. She went to run and get a phone, and she was screaming for my sister. And I fell. I hit the floor. I cracked open my jaw on the cement, and I took a breath. And when I got well and, healed, it took me a long time to come out of it, like to wake up, basically. And every time I would feel like I was waking up, I'd be back there. And I had all these experiences when I would just be back there. And when I finally did wake up, there were people all around me and spirits, and I could feel them and sense them and see them, and they would talk to me. And I was terrified. I thought they were the boogeyman, but they never went away. So it kind of became my abnormally normal life. I shared with my mom and my sister, and, what happened to me and what I saw. And my mom understood it. My sister, I think she thought I was in a dream. And I didn't know. I just knew that I was hearing and seeing things, and I was connected to the afterlife in this odd, overwhelming way. And they'd wake me up, and say, I just died. And this happened. And I'm here now. And I'm not coming back, but I didn't do it on purpose. And my family thinks I did. And you're going to hear so-and-so sister's brother's best friend died. And when you hear that, please tell them. And I was too little to understand that, and I would just be scared. But as time went on, I started to understand, and it never went away. And I became a grief and addiction counselor because I didn't want to face it. And I remember being about 17, 18, maybe years old, and my Nana died. And she came to me before I knew she died. I got a call the next morning and she talked to me. And so the next morning I'm on the phone with, at the time, UCLA Medical Center was doing, studying ESP, extrasensory perception. And I said to him, I'm seeing things. And he said, what happened to you? And I explained my journey, what happened to me as a child. And he said, well, it sounds like you're a medium. And I said, what's that? And he said, you talk to dead people. And I hung up the phone and I never spoke of it. Terrified me. And I thought, this guy's crazy. But I was speaking to the people on the other side. And that's why I love to work with children who have NDEs. I find it to be fascinating. But there was so much to that experience. And when I met Dr. Raymond Moody, who is the founder of NDEs, near-death experience, he actually coined that phrase. I said to him, I didn't see the tunnel. Why didn't I see the tunnel? Everyone else saw the tunnel. It's just like, oh, I want to float. And he said, Susan, have you ever thought that maybe the tunnel was the well? That was like the aha moment I never thought I would have. It was shocking to me. And I went, oh my God, I saw the tunnel. It was the well. And he said, many people called it a well. I was blown away by that. And so that's my story. It's much more extensive. It would take our whole podcast to tell you everything. So I cut it very short. But it was beautiful. I will tell you that I've been there since. I've had 2 experiences that were quite profound. I had a brain tumor, and during my surgery, I left my body. And I was there. And I saw everything again, but this time I was an adult. And everything made sense. And I watched the angelic realm, and I call it that because it was pure love. And that's what I was taught angels were. So it made sense to me, pure love. And they would speak, but when they would speak, the words and the music would come out at the same time, kind of like the well song. And I knew what they were saying, but it was music and words that are indescribable. And I would just spent time with them, and they explained things to me of why I had a really hard journey. I truly did. I was trafficked as a child, and my brothers and my mother committed suicide, and it was a long journey, among many other things. And they explained to me that I would help people with what I knew. And so surprisingly, and not surprisingly, a lot of people I help have been trafficked or have a lot of suicide or want to die. And so I'm able to help them. And then another time I was on the other side with I did hospice work, and I did a lot of shared death experiences with, actually, Raymond Moody wrote about it later on. It's not that long ago. He did a book on it, someone else. And I had a lot of those. And I went to learn how to do hospice work by going under with a psychiatrist, with a group of people. And I went so deep under that they couldn't get me out. My blood pressure dropped and my heart rate started rising, and they thought they were going to lose me. And I remember crying and saying, please don't make me leave my children. I was an adult at the time. And we went through all the stages of dying, is what they put us through, so we'd understand what these hospice people were going through. But I was in it. I was really there. And I kept crying and saying, please don't make me go. I don't want to say goodbye to my children. And I felt this essence around me. It was so powerful. It was what I felt from the mountain. And I heard, you will never leave them any more than I've ever left you. And I felt this rush go through me, and they were calling 911 in this room. and I was sinking, and I didn't want to come back. At that point, now once I knew I wasn't leaving my children, I wanted to stay. And the next thing I knew, I was pushed back into my body. It was like a pop. And I opened my eyes and I was soaked with tears. And I was totally disoriented. And everyone was staring at me like, what's wrong with this crazy woman? What's wrong with her? And I just felt like I had just spent time with Source. And so, these have been my experiences throughout my life. And, Dr. Moody said to me, other people have had experiences like that after having a near-death experience, especially young people. They keep getting reminded of what that was for them, and it's not in a dream. And some of them do dream it, but mine was not in a dream. And so that's what happened to me.
Susan, thank you for sharing your experience with us. If we go back to when you could see your prayers in the future, did they actually happen in the future?
They were other people's prayers, but the ones that I saw that were mine, yes.
So if you stop and think about that, how do you process seeing the future before it happened?
No one's ever asked me this question. This is such an outstanding question. I just have to say that no one has ever asked me if my prayers were in that well. I was too young to realize that was going to happen. Those things were going to happen. My brother tried to leave this planet 5 times. And I remember seeing that, me telling God, please help my brother. Somebody help my brother. And other things that happened to me. And I think looking back now, it's pretty astounding that I knew ahead of time that things were going to change.
At the time they were happening, did you have an aha moment like, oh yeah, I remembered seeing
Yes.
this on the other side?
Yes, I did. And that happened with a lot of things, not just me, not just my, I would meet someone and go, I know this person. I was walking in a convalescent, or not convalescent, but assisted living with my mother. And this woman walked in, and she was beautiful. She was elderly, and she was going to be there. And when I looked at her and she looked at me, I have never felt so much love and peace. And I ran to her. She'd never met me before. And I ran to her. I think my mom was thinking, what's she doing with this woman? And she came towards me, and I said, oh my God, I've missed you. Oh my God, I've missed you so much. And she said, I've missed you too. And we're crying, holding each other. And of course, we had to separate and go, but it was the most profound feeling. But I had seen her when I was there. I had seen her, and I knew that. And we were connected. I knew her. So that was probably the most profound experience that happened to me.
During this experience, you realized that these beings were creating a path for us, and it's our job to walk the path. In theory, it sounds easy, like, yes, let's walk the path. But we have our own free will to stray off the path. Do you have any tips for us to be able to stay on the path?
Well, we learn through free will. So here it looks like this. There's a path in front of us, and we might have 5 doors. This is a metaphorical experience I'm going to give you. We have 5 doors, and we don't know which door to go to that's going to give us our greatest growth or our greatest experience. So we open door 1, and we walk into door 1, and door 1 is not pretty. Doesn't feel good. Things don't turn out the way we'd like it to, but we learn so much from it. And then we come back out and go, I'm going to try door 2. And this is all free will, those doors. People say to me, the door is closed. And I say, it's a door, open it. Any door, open it. It's a door. And so then, we walk into door 2, and then we learn more experiences. And we walk into door 3, and we learn more experiences. But at some point, we're on the path. at some point, we are in a space of where they want us to be, but we have learned so much getting there. If you think of blessing and blocking everything, like they said, um, we see walls, and we are so human, right? And we want our free will to be what it is, and we want it to be our way. So we bang our heads against those walls that are in front of us. We all do it. I do it. I didn't listen. I'm having a human experience. We all do it. And as we're banging our head against these walls, we're calling everybody over. I know it needs to look this way. It has to look this way. And if it looks this way, then it will be right. And everybody comes and helps us. And then we get through that wall and nothing works. Battered and bruised at best, right?
I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a line between surrendering to life and manifesting and co-creating an amazing life. Where do you draw the line between the two?
Well, co-creating our life is bringing them in to help us create it. So it's always knowing, don't bang your head against a wall. Stop, pause, shift. And that's what they were trying to say. The line is the wall, but we learn from that wall. So there is no right or wrong, but best not to have to learn the pain, but to shift into something different. And we have a hard time doing that. We don't like change. Humans don't like change. The brain wants us to want what we want, and we want it now. That's the truth. And we're willing to work for it, but we want it now. And I really believe that what they're saying is sometimes what we want isn't the best thing for us. So they are trying to block it, but our free will keeps getting in the way. So when things come in front of me that I feel like I'm having to push the river, you think about if you push a river. If you put your arms down, it flows around you. If you push it, it goes over your head and drowns you. Stop pushing the river. Put your arms down and let it be what it is and walk into it without that having to make it happen. And it will happen as it should. Manifesting isn't about making it happen. It's about trusting it will happen, believing it will happen. That's what manifesting is. I think we get confused by manifesting that we have to make it happen. And when it doesn't, we think we've done something wrong. That is not true. So if we just let it be what it is and move into it and accept it as it is, it manifests for us because we're in acceptance and we can take it in.
When you initially got there, the architecture looked like something from ancient Greece. Would you say that the Akashic Records room also looked like that?
It all looked like that. It
Be-
was like the entry.
It's fascinating because many near-death experiencers describe it as that. And I'm wondering why that particular architecture.
Love that you say that because I don't work with adults who have them. I don't read about them because I don't want to taint any of my memory. So I've only read one book, which is Life After Life with Raymond, and they didn't really talk about that. So I'm so interested that you said that. There it is again, that aha moment. It's powerful. I feel that it has been with us for ever, the spirit world. I mean, obviously. And I really believe that years past, they recognized it, they knew it, they saw it, they sensed it. I believe that things were brought to them to show them that, to build that, to create that. So I think that we were meant in the likeness of God or spirit or source or Buddha or whatever you call it, whatever your choice is for that word, we were meant in the likeness of that. And so we were creating it here, but we all get off course with our free will. We all do. So I think that's the answer I can give you.
What kind of work do you do with children who's had NDEs?
Well, I have my doctorate in divinity, and I received that through Raymond Moody, and I did that so that I could help children understand what happened to them. We come back from that experience, many of us, and we don't understand. We are children with children minds. And so we can be fearful. So if something's standing at the end of your bed, you're going to immediately assume it's something that wants to hurt you. It's the boogeyman, because that's what we've learned on this planet. This planet has not taught us to accept spiritual energy. We've been taught that that's something scary, unfortunately. I mean, watch TV. we're taught it's something scary, and the mind shift is now changing, thank goodness. And we're learning that it isn't scary, but children still have that. And so, I had one child whose father shot him and then shot himself, and the child lived. And he actually got shot in the head, and he waited 24 hours for his mom or grandma to find him. And he survived. And he told me, my daddy was there holding my blood. That's how he described it to me. Holding my head, holding my blood. But his father was dead. But when his father came to him after the experience, he thought he was there to do it again. He thought he was there to hurt him. He thought he was evil, of course. And so he didn't understand any other way to think. So I was able to help him process that, and understand that once you cross over, the evil is gone. And what his dad did, he sees, and he wanted to help him just like he helped him stay alive for his grandma. So that gave him peace and soothed him. So that's why I do it. Kids tell me, I see things in my room and I think they're there to hurt me. I don't know who they are, and I can help them because I've been there. I know that experience. So I'm able to help them understand that they are loved and they don't need to be afraid.
I realized that you were a child when you had this experience. In what ways did you change?
Well, I don't know who I would, and I love that you put it that way, because I don't know who I would have been without it, but I know I would not have been who I am, if that makes sense. I really believe that I was taught to accept the journey, to survive the journey. I am very clear that there's an afterlife. And so, with all the loss I've had and all the pain I've had, I know that they are in a beautiful place, and I know I will be there someday and see them again. And that for me was how I survived it all. I mean, not many people have that many suicides in their lives. It's tremendous loss. And so I was able to move through it knowing that they loved me and they would be there for me. And I knew that I could talk to them at some point when it was time.
The being on the hill, I'm assuming that was God?
For me, yes, it was. I know other people might say it was Buddha. Other people might say it was Source, or what we believe it to be. Um, but for me, yes, that was God.
Do you fear death?
No, I fear how I'll die. I don't want to die, and I fear the sickness. I fear the human part of dying. But death is like birth. We fight it. We're afraid. We don't want to come out of the womb, right? And everything feels off, and everything feels wrong, and we're in fear, and we don't we it's the unknown. And then we get out, and things are poking and prodding at us, and then we're wrapped in a blanket of love, and we're put in our mommy's arms. And I really believe that's how death feels. We're afraid. We're fighting it. We don't know what to expect. It feels like the unknown, and then we cross, and we're wrapped in a blanket of love, and we're in the arms of love. So it's similar. It's very similar. And so when we can look at it that way, we recognize that we don't have to be afraid. But I am afraid of suffering. I don't want to suffer. And so how I die matters to me.
If you had a friend that was grieving over the loss of a loved one, what kind of advice would you give?
To move into it. I really believe that we fight grief, and what we run from chases us, and what we try to control controls us. What they said to me matters when it comes to grief. Grief is in charge. It is in the corner doing push-ups, waiting for that vulnerable moment. You're in the grocery store, you're looking at a can of beans, and all of a sudden, here it comes. Move into it. Don't be afraid of it. Don't shy away from it. Allow it. Allow it. If you fight it, it lingers more. It comes on stronger. It takes over faster. Most people say to me, Susan, I don't know what's wrong with me. I keep crying, and I say, you're grieving. Can you please remind yourself of that? Give yourself grace. I tell them to carry a grace card in their pocket, and every time they have to say that to themselves, to pull it out. We give grace to everyone but ourselves. And to understand and say to themselves, oh, that's right, I'm grieving. And grief doesn't have a timeline. We cannot measure grief no more than we can measure love. And so there is no measurement for it. So you have to experience it, and everyone will, and give yourself love and grace while you're going through it.
You mentioned that after your experience, you have this ability to communicate with beings on the other side. How do you do that?
They do it. I don't know how else to say it. I'm People come to my office and I ask spirit to suit up and show up. And I start getting evidence, like I'll say, your loved one's here. They tell me they died from this. This is their name. They tell me your last conversation was this and this and this. This is their personality. This is what they loved. This was their relationship with you. And people go, oh my God, how could you know that? And I'm thinking, oh my God, how could I know that?
Are you clairaudient and you hear their voice, or do you get the information like a download?
Both and all. I have all the clairs. But in those rooms, when I'm doing mediumship, it's a knowing, it's claircognizance. That's what I use. It's efficient. I just know they're here. I know what they want to say. I know their name. I know who they are. That's how it works. I'm an evidential medium. I'm a grief worker. And so mediumship really helps people heal. It doesn't take the grief away, but it helps lighten that, to know that your loved one's there with you and that they're not gone. They are literally a heartbeat away. Your heart stops, you're there. It's literal. And when we understand that, it shifts the energy. It doesn't take the pain away, it doesn't lessen it, but it helps us know that we'll see them again and that they are there with us. I love when they tell me, the spirit world or loved one tells me what just went on. For instance, oh, you just had a birthday party for your niece. They were there. Oh, you let the balloons go. They saw the balloons. One landed in the tree. Still in the tree in your yard. People go, what? How could you know this? And I think, how could I know this? But I also say, because they're telling me. They're letting me know because they want you to know they're there. And they are there. They don't care about our humanness. They don't know everything we do. And they don't care about, us taking a shower or, things like that. And they don't interfere and they can't read our minds. They probably could if they wanted to, but they're not interested in that. They're interested in love. They are love. And that's what they're interested in. And so they come when we feel love for them. The reason people can't see them is because when you're grieving, you're at a very low vibrational energy. You're like a sloth in movement, and they're like the hummingbird. They're moving at high speed. The medium is like a butterfly. They're moving at a little bit higher speed. So they see some of it. They miss some of it and they see some of it. But you're like a sloth when you're in. Sloths are beautiful. I love them, but they move very slowly. So by the time that the sloth has moved fast enough to see where that hummingbird or their loved one is, they've gone to a million different places and maybe they've stopped for that moment. So grief is dark and deep. It just is. It is what it is. And we grow from it. And from my own experience, I know we've grow from it. In exponentially, I mean, the growth is unbelievable. So to expect to be able to see them is a lot to expect of yourself when you're in that space. But I will tell people, as they raise their vibration, dance, talking about them, laughter about experiences, talk about your memories, music, anything that can bring your vibration up helps you to witness the energy of them, but you have to be present. Life is in session. Be present. We aren't present. I asked my students what color were the flowers when you came to my room, and they look at me with their jaw dropped. And there's millions of flowers on my office. And they'll say, I don't know. And I go, because you're not present. You have to be present. Life is in session. Be present, be here, be now, so that you can experience them. Because if you're somewhere else, you won't. And we're always somewhere else. We're human. We have a mind. It travels everywhere. So I ask people to come back to the now, right where their feet are, literally. And then they can experience them in a different way, them meeting the spirit world or their loved ones.
Your book is called Infinite Life, Infinite Lesson, Wisdom from the Spirit World on Living, Dying, and the In-Between. What is the main takeaway you would want the reader to get from that book?
There's so many. Um, how to understand the difference between fear and intuition, and to understand that you are made from love, you are love, and you are loved. And our soul path, ultimately, at the end of it, is to have self-love, and it's the hardest thing we do. And when you start to understand that you are made from and with love, and you are from love, and you are love, you begin to process into that understanding of the power of it. It is our superpower. When we look at ourselves, with love, we feel more powerful, empowered, we feel safe, we feel good enough. But that is not what the world shows us. The world shows us another side. And so I think at the end of it, the takeaway is that, and that they really exist. They really are there.
Susan, after watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you open to that?
I am. I have a speak pipe on susangrau.com that they have 90-second questions. They can go to contact page and send me a question. And I'm happy to answer them, but they have me grace because I get thousands of them. And so I am happy to answer them, but it may take me some time. Social media is another way. Susan Grau Official. Everything is social media. I'm having a book signing in October 26th at the Grove. They can come there if they live in California and ask me questions, and I'll be happy to answer them there. So there's a lot of different ways. I have a podcast, Infinite Life, Infinite Wisdom. They ask me questions there, and I answer them. So there's all different kinds of ways.
Do you have anything else that you're working on that you want people to know about?
I am working on a new book called Infinite Healing. Now, I do want to say that everything I do is infinite. I'm trying to do a trilogy so that people understand that our lives are infinite and there are infinite things that we have to do. And this is about the soul. So there's a lot of books out there about soul wounds and how our soul gets damaged. That is not what they taught me. When I was there, I shared earlier, they taught me that our soul is the divine vine to the divine. And it is our lifeblood. So if you put a leaf in your hand, it's just a leaf. If you hold it up to the light, it is full of veins that create the leaf to be green and not crumble. That is our soul connected to them. And so I want to teach people that there is infinite ways to heal, and that our soul feels the wounds, but it does not get damaged by the wounds. And it's the one place you can go that Spirit has given you to heal anything and everything. And I know that from my own life experience. I don't just say this because they said it. And that is what this book is about.
Susan, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
There's so many I would like to say. I want people to know that they need to give themselves grace and that they are enough just as they are. They are safe and they are enough. And when we know we are enough and that we have a way to heal ourselves, we are not lost. We are not lost. We are enough. And everything inside of us gives us enough. They created us to be enough. And that's what I want people to know. And your soul path is to learn to love yourself and recognize that.
Susan, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you for having me. I've loved this. I love the questions you've asked. They've been phenomenal. Never been asked a lot of them.
Thank you. Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.